Poor Zacchaeus. So frequently has he been unfairly compared to the IRS that his reputation has been sorely tarnished. In this video presentation, you will receive Mediterranean cultural insights that will reveal the true character of Zacchaeus. Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. At that time, Jesus came to Jericho and intended to pass through the town. Now a man there named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector and also a wealthy man, was seeking to see who Jesus was. But he could not see him because of the crowd, for he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree in order to see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When he reached the place, Jesus looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house." And he came down quickly and received him with joy. When they all saw this, they began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to stay at the house of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I repay it 4 times over." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the skyvault man has come to seek and to save what was lost." Now in this gospel story, Zacchaeus is thought of as a rich man. And if you have been watching these Bible Alive presentations, my friends, almost always in your English translated Bible, rich should be scratched out and replaced with greedy. Almost always. But there are exceptions to the rule. Economics as we know it today began to develop after Adam Smith and Karl Marx. In antiquity, economics and economic understanding operated at an extremely different level. The terms rich and poor, which we use rather frequently, had quite different meanings in the ancient world than they do for us. We have explored this before with other presentations, here and here. I will link these at the end of this presentation. The people who populate the pages of our Bible believe that all things of value in life already existed, were limited in quantity, and already distributed with no more to come. When it's gone, it's gone. This included honor, semen, wealth, blood, anything else one could think of that had value. People had whatever they had. That is the biblical view. So if someone suddenly lost something of value, it was suspected that somewhere someone else had gained it. The one who had suddenly gained something had to prove that it was not stolen. In the biblical world, there simply was no honorable way to increase your goods. The word poor, therefore, in the Bible, describes people who had temporarily fallen out of their honor status, their social standing. It was their task to resume normal status as quickly as possible. In the scriptures, the poor are frequently clustered with widows and orphans. Widows could regain their status if they were married. The status of orphan is characteristic of childhood. One who was orphaned could eventually grow into adulthood and marry, leaving the status of orphanhood behind. One ancient understanding of rich people is those who did not have to work for a living. Such people in the Mediterranean world of the Bible were supposed to be powerful patrons, very powerful patrons, served by clients, servants, and others who carried out their wishes. Zacchaeus, the rich man, belonged to this category. And like we've said, almost always, rich can mean greedy in the Bible. But as this gospel story progresses, it should become clear that Zacchaeus does not seem to be greedy at all. As a toll collector, Zacchaeus bid to Rome for the right to collect tolls, not personally, but through those who worked for him, his agents. When Rome accepted his bid, Zacchaeus paid them the toll for his region in full. Then it was up to him to recoup his bid by collecting the tolls and trying to make a profit if possible. Zacchaeus and people like him relied on agents to do that work. Enviable as it may sound, few ancient toll collectors managed to recoup their bid, and fewer still managed to make a profit. Zacchaeus, though, was rich in that others, hired agents, did his work for him. In his case, rich does not mean greedy. So, does that make Zacchaeus a righteous man? When Jesus invites himself to Zacchaeus' home, the Pharisees grumble that he is a sinner. Zacchaeus defends himself quite pointedly. Indeed, he literally stopped the procession to his house so that he might publicly demonstrate that he is not a sinner as charged. First, he admits to giving half of his possessions to the poor, those who cannot defend their honor status. Zacchaeus uses the present tense, which in the Greek language describes repeated customary practice. In other words, Zacchaeus gives to the poor on a regular, ongoing basis. Most translations, like the New American Bible Revised Edition, wrongly use the future tense, I will give. Grammatically, this is possible, but not plausible. In the gospel we call Luke, giving alms is a sign of righteousness. Second, Zacchaeus pronounces a conditional clause. If I have cheated someone, whose form in Greek does not imply that he consciously committed extortion, but only if he discovers that by accident he had cheated somebody, then Zacchaeus has a plan whose details are amazing. He restores what he has inadvertently cheated 400%. Now, in the Torah, the demand was the restoration of the object plus 20%, 1/5 interest. Roman law required fourfold restitution only from a convicted criminal. It's clear that Zacchaeus has surpassed the Torah's requirements and met the most stringent of terms in Roman law. Now let's consider the name Zacchaeus. This name appears only here in this gospel story in the entire New Testament library. In the Old Testament, it occurs only at 2 Maccabees chapter 10, verse 19. The Hebrew word from which this name is formed means clean, pure, innocent. So the anonymous author we call Luke has reported in his gospel the story of Mr. Clean, Mr. Pure, Mr. Innocent. But poor Zacchaeus has unfortunately rarely been presented as such in Sunday school and worship services. Having worked for an archdiocese at many different places and many different levels for 21 years, I could tell you of the many times catechists have misused this story right before taking children to confession. Scholars are divided about whether Zacchaeus became a follower of Jesus on the occasion of meeting Jesus here in this story, or had done so earlier in his career. The great context group scholar John Pilch sided with the scholars who claimed that Zacchaeus was transformed earlier and was misjudged by the grumbling Pharisees. Even in antiquity, the only exercise some people got was jumping to conclusions. In this interpretation of the Zacchaeus story, contemporary Western believers can find in this much maligned character an excellent model of good self-esteem. Jesus recognized and proclaimed the value of Zacchaeus by calling him a son of Abraham rather than son of tax collectors. Jesus knew and publicly proclaimed Zacchaeus' true identity. With more than 75% of United States people suffering low self-esteem, Zacchaeus is a fine example of how to resist and survive the critical comments of others.